Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Adjuster Recharge Strategies for Overcoming Stress and Burnout in the Claims Industry webinar today. This session will address the root causes of stress and burnout among adjusters, offering practical tools, peer discussion, and strategies to build resilience and improve well-being in the claims profession. The course will last 60 minutes. You must be logged in for 50 of those 60 minutes of the course to receive one CECLE general credit. It has been approved and the stays listed on your screen. Also, you'll need to answer the poll questions that will appear throughout the presentation. The poll questions are a confirmation that you are still viewing the event. There will be several polls activated during the course. You must answer at least two. If you have questions about CECLE, you can email help@theclm.org. The slides for this presentation can be downloaded for your reference from the related content widget. If you have any technical questions or questions for the presenters, please use the Q&A box on your screen. Our presenters will be answering your content questions at the appropriate time. If you have any picture or sound issues, please try refreshing your screen. With that, it's time for us to get started. Please welcome Chris.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Our session is called Adjuster Recharge, Overcoming Stress and Burnout in the Claims Industry. And before I get into the introductions of our panel, I just wanted to talk about a story back in 2012 that was reported. They're finally going to make a movie about the life of a claims adjuster. Maybe some of you have heard this story. They are all set to cast it. They wanted to have a great method actor play this lead role. So they offered Daniel Day-Lewis $15 million to be the star. So as the story goes, he researches this role, and his quote is, "The script is good, the crew is good, but spending time with a claims adjuster, yelling at people on the phone or getting yelled at by people on the phone was just too much. I don't know how these people do it." So a great method actor who once lived in the woods to prepare for a role. He suffered injuries in war movies. He felt that that emotional pain of being a adjuster was just too much. So I don't know if there's a better way to sum up burnout and stress in our industry than that right there. So today we'll spend about an hour on this topic and explain why everyone attending this call today probably deserves an Oscar for making it this far in claims. So when we did present this topic a few months ago at the CLM conference, one of our roundtable members today, Rod Patterson, offered a great everyday comparison of stress and burnout. So Rod, if you don't mind, maybe you could share that example again with us today.
Oh, sure, Chris. And I'm so proud to be here with my friends here just to present on this important topic. And when you think about stress, we're really not created to hold on to stress because it can get heavy. Now, if you can imagine how heavy a glass of water would be if you just filled it to the brim and you held it out and you held that glass of water, it's not heavy at all. But if you hold on to it for in that same position for 5 minutes, it's a lot heavier. For 10 minutes, it's getting extremely heavy. For 20 minutes, your arm is about to fall off. And that is what stress is like when you hold on to it for a long time. You really do need to put it down. And so I was glad to share that. And thanks for bringing that up, Chris.
Sure. Thanks, Rod. And that's why we're here today. And I'm not here alone. I'm joined by three incredible colleagues who have all carried their own glass of water in this industry and are ready to share, what's worked and what hasn't when it comes to managing stress and avoiding burnout. So let's meet our panelists who will share their name, brief background, and maybe offer one stressful moment from their career. I'll start. My name is Chris Casaleggio. I'm a regional director at a forensic engineering firm called the Vertex Companies. In my past life, I was an adjuster for 12 years, working at a few different carriers in both auto and general liability. I've written a few claims books, practical guides to help adjusters build confidence, develop a positive mindset, and navigate some of the biggest challenges in our industry. I would say for me personally, a stressful moment in claims was probably just after Hurricane Sandy. I began working at a new carrier. I was handling liability claims, but all hands were really on deck handling property claim first reports too. So To complicate matters, I also had to learn two different claim software systems because there was a transition going on. So it was a little bit of a sink or swim moment for me at that time. But maybe Rod, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Rod Patterson, Vice President, Director of Property Claims at Seneca Insurance. And Seneca is a wholly owned subsidiary of Crum and Forster. We have many products. We write all 50 states. And I'm also the author of Guard Your Gate, Simple Steps to High Productivity. You know, there are so many different stressful moments in my career. I've been in this business since 1989. But one in particular that really created a lot of anxiety for me was, of course, during a cat event, like Chris mentioned. Whenever I had one particular cat where I was going to be deployed to an area, and I'm coming up the stairs to get myself ready, get all my equipment ready, and my phone drops and breaks. And I have to order a new phone, and I have to now use my personal phone. It created so much pressure because there's pressure already because you're getting ready to go into an environment where people are dealing with a lot of crises, right? But now I don't have all the tools I need to really address their need. And so it created a little anxiety for me, but I was able to get through it and respond to the crisis myself. But that was a very interesting moment for me, Chris. Nice to meet you all.
Matt, how about you?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Chris. My name is Matt Stopa. I'm with Acadia Insurance. We're a Northeast regional carrier, part of the W.R. Berkeley umbrella. I've been at Acadia for most of my career, about 12, 13 years. Most of that spent as a casualty adjuster, handling auto, GL, EPLI, and the like. Past few years, I've moved into management, and I have also transitioned into the workers' compensation sphere. So it's been a rewarding career where I've gotten to learn multiple lines of business. And thank you, CLM, for having me and for having us here as again after our conference in Texas earlier this year, where we can continue sharing this this very important topic with you all.
Thanks. And Pat, last but not least, certainly.
Certainly not least. Thanks, Chris. Pat Callahan. My current role is as Director of Property Loss Consulting with MC Consultants, a firm that works with insurance companies and legal professionals. But I've spent approximately 20 years in the property insurance claims world and filled many roles from adjuster through to claim manager. And certainly part of that evolution brought one of my stress areas where I was working as an adjuster, but I was asked to do a quality assurance role at the same time. So I was not only adjusting claims, but I was auditing what my colleagues were doing and providing a measure of their performance. And believe me, that is a stress position. So thanks, Chris and Rod and Matt, and certainly CLM. Thanks for this opportunity.
Sure. We'll go to our next slide here. So just looking at what burnout really is, and I think it's important to look at stress versus burnout because they aren't the same thing. And stress is the body's response to pressure. It can actually be positive too. It motivates us to meet a challenge or maybe hit a deadline. But burnout is different. It's something long term, the result of unmanaged stress. Maybe you feel drained or detached, unable to recover without making some bigger changes. So you can kind of see our list here. But I do want to throw it to the panel now to kind of share some stories or experience on this topic. And maybe I'll pick on you again, Rod.
Yeah, that seems to be your habit. You always want to pick on me, you know. But yeah, you know, stress and anxiety is a problem in our industry because of the not only because of the amount of work, but because of the issues that we deal with and how we have to respond to this work. Because there's personal stress that you feel. There's the stress of the people that you're working with, perhaps your colleagues. There's also the stress of whether it's policyholders or claimants that you're walking into the same environment with. And I love what you said, how you distinguish that, yeah, there's a certain degree of pressure that comes with the job that really can be good for you because it makes the issue important, and you want to respond to that kind of pressure with positive energy. But then there's a certain point where you become burnt out. Now, burnout is when you always feel like that, when you wake up feeling like that, when you go to bed feeling exhausted. We all get tired sometimes, but when you are exhausted, it is a different level of tired. And it's not healthy for you. So I think one of the best things you can do is identify when you feel burnt out and when you feel drained. And I think that's important.
Agreed, Rod. It's really important to know the difference between stress and burnout because we're all, as claim adjusters, claim managers. I know there's a lot of attorneys probably on this call as well. So as attorneys, we all deal with stress every day in our lives. It comes with the job, and there's no getting away from it. And the whole purpose is to try to avoid that next step, that where the stress becomes too much and no longer becomes manageable, the job no longer becomes fun. And an example that I'll share, it's not really an exact example, it's just a trend that I kind of have seen over the years is when adjusters or attorneys, when they're either new to an organization or say they've been with the organization for a while, but they're feeling caught up, they're in a good place with their work, and they take their foot off the gas and they kind of, they're going along smoothly. So maybe they're not working as hard during the workday as they normally would be because they know that tomorrow they'll be able to catch up and all of that. Um, that's all fine until something happens the next day that kind of flips your world upside down, and now all of a sudden you are trying to manage a tough situation that has come out of nowhere. You're behind on the other things you were working on as well, so now you're feeling burnt out. And a specific example I have where this could have been the case is back in 2015. It was a normal day at work, a normal morning in the office, when I get a call that one of our insureds they were repaving a stretch of highway in Connecticut, and they had opened it up too early. They opened up the interstate highway too early, and several hundred vehicles went over it, got tar and emulsion on their car within just a few minutes, really. So all of a sudden I got the call that I was assigned that claim, and my world got turned upside down for really the next month. Phone calls, emails, nonstops. It was like 600 or 700 vehicles. It wasn't a great major claim for any one person. I mean, we're talking about $500 to $1,000 any one person, but there was just so much repetition of that, 500, 600 times over, that it was a lot to deal with. And I just think, if I didn't have my desk in a good position when that morning came, then burnout could have come so much quicker. Instead, by allowing my desk to be in a nice, comfortable position, I could deal with emergencies that come up without them necessarily turning my own world upside down.
Yes, and I think you shared that one at the conference as well. Was that not the one where they also put your phone number on the news, or was that a different one?
That's exactly that same claim. It
Okay,
was
so
the
add that to
Connecticut
the
DOT
burnout.
did not want to deal with this, so they put my name and my phone number on the local news and the newspaper. If you travel this stretch of highway during this time, call Matt Stopa. He'll help you out. So as you can
That
imagine,
is,
the
well,
phone
Matt,
kept
go
buzzing
ahead
for
and
a
feel
while.
free. Go ahead, feel free to put your number in the chat, Matt. That is really good to know that we can always reach out to you.
Yeah,
I
that's
had to
great. Yeah.
disconnect that phone number. Sorry, Rod.
But it's so slow. It's progressive. I mean, everyone, all the adjusters that I know, they want to do a good job. So even when they're given very challenging situations, they jump in, with both feet and focused on it. And sometimes they don't even realize the amount of pressure that they're under, the amount of stress that they're under to respond timely to policyholders, to respond timely to management. And ultimately, there are usually signs that a person is under that kind of pressure. So you need to be mindful of how it can be a gradual growth to burnout.
Exactly. And Pat, I want to draw you in on this too, because you had mentioned this article that you read, which really resonated, and it was like 12 plus years ago, right?
Yeah,
Slow Death from a Cubicle about claims adjusting, if you want to chat
yeah.
about that one.
The article was, written from a adjuster's perspective, and the point was that the adjusters at that time, and we all existed in, cubicle farms, and answering the phone, dealing with your computer, and just a constant influx of claims. And you're measured by only a couple of things. You're measured by cycle time, and you're measured by uh, pending. So the point this adjuster was making is you see emails and there's a constant flow of people leaving. And if someone leaves in a claim environment, well, what happens? That pending gets distributed. All right. So those pressures, but let's fast forward to now. Cubicle farms don't exist. All right. Everybody's working. Well, most people are working in a remote setting. And even though cubicle farms had their own problem, what could you do then? You could have recreational complaining with your colleagues. And it's a release of that pressure by discussing things amongst yourselves. But now working in a remote setting, the same dynamic is in place where people leave the company, there are new people coming, and your pending doesn't get smaller. So you're alone. You're dealing with the stress of the work alone, and you're carrying everything without a pressure release because you're working remotely. So that article could be updated mostly with what was spoken of earlier, but a key thing missing of you don't have anyone, few people to share it with. So it's meaningful to this day, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, Pat, for sharing that article. I know if anybody wants to look it up, Slow Death from a Cubicle. But I think we'll shift gears to the actual top stressors that we've kind of come up with here too, um, and dive right into it. And by all means, if anyone wants to type into the chat box, if you have some top stressors that we haven't listed there, or you agree with some of these, by all means. Um, it's kind of just a starting point for discussion. We won't go through them all, but Matt, are there any that you kind of see on this list as a manager that really resonate with you, or maybe as an adjuster? Some of the top ones.
Yeah, let's start right off the top, off the screen, Chris. The first one, heavy workload. I think that's one that we can all speak to from experience, whether we've been an adjuster, a manager, or in this industry somehow. The claims keep coming. The people keep creating accidents, and the claims keep coming. So those feelings of being overloaded, of being swamped, those are normal to our industry, and that's something that we have to manage. My kind of advice for this is you have to, an adjuster or a leader, an attorney, we have to know how to prioritize our desk, how to prioritize our workday, and how to organize our diaries, our activities, and in our claim files so that we can do everything that needs to be done without falling behind. Another suggestion I have for everyone, and I don't mean to come off as this is the claim manager that's telling you what they want to see in everyone, because I spent a lot of years as an adjuster, and these are also just me sharing my things that have helped me in my career as an adjuster stay on top of things as well. Don't just pick. Don't look for the low-hanging fruit to pick, because when you're doing that, it's great. It might seem like you're being very productive that day. You're completing all these activities, all these diaries on any one given day. But at the same time, you're allowing your harder, more challenging, more time-consuming claims to pile up, and they'll still be there waiting for you once you get done picking all the low-hanging fruit. So just understanding the needs of every file that you get, and also understanding what your company's, what your organization's priorities are. So where I work, we put a big emphasis on making timely first contacts with the parties involved, starting your investigation early, taking statements early, and getting all that going. And I think that's so big, just understanding what the expectations are, because that allows me as an adjuster to meet those expectations, because I can get that claim rolling, I can get it in a good spot, and then I can focus on other stuff as I wrap up the early tasks on that claim. Another thing I want to talk about, a stressor, is the difficult claims that we've all have to deal with from time to time, the ones that we really dread. because that's I think a whole separate topic. It's those claims that kind of we lay in bed at night and we think about. And for those, it's don't put them off as much as we want to put them off because we may not be sure what to do with them. Don't put them off because we'll never get to them. The situation is just going to keep festering and smoldering until it becomes, a full out fire. And then you won't know the claim is going to be in a very bad position at that time. So another suggestion I have from what I've seen, what I've dealt with myself is don't put off the difficult, challenging claims. Try to get ahead of those, work on those when they need to be worked on. If you don't know what you're doing in them, you don't know the next step because it's a new situation, don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's a peer, a senior claim rep, or your manager or another manager. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's no claim out there that's truly unique that no one has ever seen. So don't be afraid to reach out, ask for different perspectives, ask for different opinions, but keep that claim going. That way you can get it to a better position and you're not, dealing with anxiety just thinking about that claim every evening or on your weekends.
Wow, that's amazing, Matt, because taking care of your being proactive on the file, taking care of diaries, and sometimes you'll take a day off, right? Or maybe you got sick, and then you come in the next day, and now you have to catch up with those diaries that perhaps built up during your time away, and that in and of itself can create a little anxiety. But the reality is, when I'm looking at if I have a heavy caseload and I'm about to jump into this file, I'm thinking which one of these files is creating the greatest amount of stress for me. Which one? Where am I feeling the pressure? And those are the ones that I attack first. Because once those files are in shape and have been addressed, I am more relaxed. And then it's amazing how much more work you can get done when you're not under pressure. So when you take care of those pressure items, when there's a heavy caseload, it creates less stress and gives you more energy and you feel accomplished. And now you're ready to tackle the easier files and the easier diaries to move them forward. But a lot of times, even when you are under pressure, you can become very slow to react and you may put off getting to those important matters, which is procrastination. It is easy to procrastinate when you are burnt out because you figure, I just don't have the energy to do it. I just don't have the time to do it. I don't feel like doing it because, I feel so burnt out, which may in turn cause another part of your stress. So being proactive and like Matt said earlier, just doing proactive work, getting to those files, taking care of your diaries, and not procrastinating will give you so much more peace because it's really not so much about stress. It's really about peace. You want to enjoy your job. That's my goal for anyone who works for me. I want them to enjoy coming to work and enjoy the work that they do because this is really great work. I love the career of the adjuster. We help so many people, but you don't want to be a casualty of that help. So when you are organized and you are proactive, you avoid procrastination and you avoid, getting burned out over a few files, especially when you attack those files early and often and get those off your plate. You are free to really give your full attention to your policyholders and your team members.
Pat, what do you think about this topic? What are your thoughts?
I'd like to touch on the litigation fatigue. We all know in the insurance world that somewhat the art of negotiation is being left in the dust. And whether it's policyholders, claimants, or even adjusting staff, the rush to litigation is more than ever a high factor now. And stay in your lane. If you're an adjuster and counsel reaches out to you, whether it's house counsel or outside counsel, and they're looking for you to add to either the investigation or the planned resolution of the litigation, Don't try to be the attorney. Don't try to be the cause and origin person. You remember, you're being hired because you're an expert at what you do. Have comfort that you have that expertise. Do that role. Present what is needed to counsel. Follow up with a call to speak to it. And if you're the attorney, understand what that adjuster or expert's going to bring and clearly define what's needed. And then people can focus on those things that they are experts at. And you don't get distracted by parts that you're not experts at. I know that sounds kind of funny, but have confidence in what you're doing, and there will be less stress in how you participate in litigation.
Sure. When you talk about fatigue, Pat, here's one that we don't tend to think of, but I'm sure everyone feels it. And I won't pick on any, well, Zoom fatigue, Teams meeting fatigue, having to always constantly be online and on screen. It can come these days. That's all we do. And it's a necessary tool, and it's something that we use, and we have to do it. This is today. It is a product of COVID, right? But even that can become more stressful for you if you always have to be on screen. And as you mentioned previously, I think it was Matt who mentioned that we're working in a hybrid environment, right? So we're working at home. So our home environment needs to be such that we can conduct business. And sometimes that is not always the case, because maybe you don't live alone, or you have children, or you have family members, or your apartment situation is such that there may be some distractions around you, and that can create some challenges for you, and may come with its own pressures. So how do you deal with that? Then that goes back to being proactive, making sure that, okay, well, maybe I am feeling a little Zoom fatigue, so perhaps we can have this conversation in person, or perhaps we can have this conversation over the phone. And this way it would avoid the necessity of you having to prepare, and, like, with me, have to do my hair and make sure that I'm very presentable when I'm on a screen. That's one less thing that I have to do. So those types of, you can't dismiss those fatigues as well, in terms of being always on the ready to be presentable on the screen when you're working, especially remotely.
And I just to echo what Matt said about the heavy workload, as adjusters, you're always, when you get, 5-10 claims a day, sometimes in auto, everybody's a little bit upset. But I remember a time when we got no claims. Everybody was celebrating except one guy. One fellow adjuster was very upset about not getting any claims. He was, worried about the security of the company, and, what's going on. We should be getting claims. It was just, everybody's like, what are you talking about? But he was just very concerned about job security. So it is kind of the way you look at it. And I think that kind of goes into our next slide on the coping strategies. And some of it is, perspective as well. But we just looked at a little bit at the stressors. Now, the good news is we kind of know what's causing the strain. That's the first step to fixing it. And we'll talk about now some strategies that might work. So I do want to get Rod's viewpoint to kick this off, because he literally wrote the book on time management, right? Guard Your Gates dives into this and kind of protecting your focus. So Rod, how do you kind of see that fitting into the way we deal with burnout?
Well, absolutely. In Guard Your Gates, I talk about the time gate, where you manage your time proactively, and you do three things: you organize your time, you defend your time, and then you guard your time. Uh, Organizing your time is just uh, knowing your calendar, knowing how much time you have, and setting time apart for your peers, whether it's educational growth, whether it's speaking to your mentor, whether it's speaking to your mentee, and sometimes menting, talking to your mentee downward, giving them advice, but just setting time apart so that you can speak to people about how you're feeling, right? If you're going through your day and for weeks and you're burdened, and you never set aside some time to speak with your manager about it, or speak with your friends about it, you'll never deal with it. Being proactive in terms of your calendar will definitely give you more opportunities to get that relief, because that pressure is building. And as Pat said, if we're working in a hybrid environment and we have no one to talk to, there's no outlet. You need to make time for that outlet. You need to make time for your friends. There are times when you need to go to lunch and you need to attend a meeting with people in person so that you can build that camaraderie. It's amazing how well you feel about your friends and your peers. Because sometimes, even when you're away from them, you may think they feel a certain way about you. You may think they don't want to talk to you anymore. But then when you see them in person, wow, it's like you never left the moment from the last time you were together. So guarding your time gate is really important. And if you don't do it, other people and other things will take up that time and create more stress and anxiety for you. But that is how you can bring that relief, by making time to enjoy your life and enjoy your family and your friends.
Right. And another coping strategy I kind of like on here is professional growth. And I feel like, Matt, you've been involved in that a lot, going to different conferences, trying to learn as much as you can. We actually met at a CLM Claims College a long time ago. So what are your kind of thoughts on the professional growth strategy to kind of cope with stress and burnout?
I think this is a great strategy, like a big picture, high level strategy. Get yourself out of the weeds of day-to-day claim handling and focus on something else for a little bit. These conferences that we have available to us in the industry, I think those are sometimes they within themselves are adjuster recharges, because you get to go to a seminar, to a conference, or even attend a webinar like this, where you're there with other people that do similar work to you and that also want to be there, right? So you're already there with like-minded people, and you get to learn with them, network with them, and you can make connections that can last last a lifetime. Like Chris, you mentioned how we met. I mean, all of my co-panelists on this call today, we met through industry events, and it's nice having people like that that I don't necessarily work alongside with, but people in the industry that I can reach out to if I ever have a question or just want to talk about whether it's a claim or whether it's about a career or anything like that. And it's not just the conferences and the networking events, it's also the education that you can pursue as an adjuster or as an attorney. There's some great programs out there like the AIC designation, CPCU, CLM also offers several designations that I'm aware of. I think you can get your certified claims professional designation by attending claims college and completing a course about casualty claims or property claims or workers' comp claims. Or I know they also have the CLMP, I think might be mistaking a certified litigation management professional. And these are all great opportunities to expand your knowledge. Again, get yourself away from that desk for a couple days, or when you're studying, get yourself away from that desk and just think about claims and the industry from a higher level. Gives you a different perspective of things, and it makes you smarter, makes you more intelligent, gets your name out there. You can add some fancy letters to your email signature line, but it's refreshing to me to participate in some of these events for both my education and for my industry networking.
And Pat, maybe you want to tackle mindset and perspective shifts, because we've always talked about that. What do you kind of think about that as a coping strategy?
Well, I'd like to remind everyone who's listening in or watching this webinar is that everybody has a workload. Okay. And often we set ourselves up for additional stress by setting artificial deadlines that may not be as important to another person as they are what you think. So if you tell somebody, I will have X done on Wednesday, that other person might think, okay, that's great. I don't need it till the next Wednesday. So if your mindset is, all right, let me establish my work framework, but if I'm not going to meet what I suggested I was going to do, and you communicate with that other person, in most cases, that's okay, as long as you have a resolution of that work. be careful of establishing multiple impossible deadlines for yourself. All right. Step back and say, well, are all of these super high priority, or do I just need to get them done? Because often your colleagues will reach out and say, I need something, please, as a favor, I need it tomorrow. And if you leave yourself a little wiggle room and you can get those urgent items done for somebody else, it's going to make you feel great, number one. It's going to build, reliance in that other person. But keep in mind all those other tasks that you have established, these artificial deadlines. It's if you don't meet one, they're not going to take away your birthday. Okay, just be practical and communicate with the persons who are counting on you. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember these strategies aren't, about doing them all at once, but maybe picking one or two you can kind of put into practice and kind of protect your
Absolutely.
energy and stay effective. So,
But
but of
also,
course, just unless anybody wanted to comment on that further.
now I just wanted to jump in and just say, Pat, again, that communication is the key.
Without
Communication,
question, Rod.
like you said, you can be putting yourself under pressure that you really don't need to be under, just because you haven't communicated that maybe this date needs to move, or you cannot attend this meeting, or you need to delegate some of your responsibilities. The power of the word no, or the phrase that I'm not available, that particular, you don't have to attend every meeting. You don't necessarily need to be at every event. So you can express in a way that's respectful, to your colleagues, that maybe you'll miss this particular event because you just don't have the capacity to be there. You have other more pressing matters. But sometimes we have these pressures that we put on ourselves that we don't share. We don't communicate with our partners just to say, this doesn't work for me, and maybe I'm at my capacity. Or even if you have a heavy caseload, talking to your manager, listen, can I take a break of getting new assignments until I get caught up with what I'm currently working on? Of course, we all want to be successful. We all don't want to seem like we're inadequate. But when one of my favorite stories is that you don't want to be the weak link in the chain. The weak link in the chain is not the link that has an issue. It's the link that has an issue that no one knows about, right? Because if you have a heavy caseload and you can't take any more work and you don't say anything, then the expectation is that you can take more work. But when you say something, then we know, okay, perhaps I can compensate for that person by giving more assignments to other people and giving that person a break. And avoid that way, you can avoid being the weak link, and you're not going to be perceived as inadequate or not able to do your job. You're being honest and you're being straightforward, and it's going to make you look good.
Definitely. These individual strategies are great that we have up here, but really I want to shift gears to the environment that you work in, because sometimes, the culture really has the effect. And, burnout doesn't just cost people their health, it sometimes costs organizations their best talent. Pat, maybe you could touch on the big picture perspective. What does it cost a company, burnout?
In the businesses that we're discussing here, insurance adjusting and litigation support, neither of those businesses have an owner's manual that you can pick up and become that thing. These roles take time, experience, folklore, dealing with others and learning within the environment. So if you have an experienced adjuster or attorney, paralegal, whatever, who gets to the point of burnout and stress where they're saying, all right, I'm going to move along to greener grass. That those the institutional or the intellectual capital that those persons take with them has a value that is difficult to calculate, but is a big value. If you have 5 adjusters in your unit and one of them says, I've had enough, no mas, and they move along. Well, now you're dividing what's left amongst 4 persons, and you want to hire somebody, and it's going to take years to build them up the same way. There is an opportunity cost to loss of a claim professional or legal professional, a big opportunity cost. And I don't know if people quantify it. I don't know if the leadership at the top recognizes that, because there just may not be that thing, but your colleagues recognize it. So it's incumbent on not only the person who's experiencing it, but your peers to support and recognize that if you disappear from the work, somebody's got to pick that up. So there's an absolute cost to it. Thanks, Chris.
Well, the culture is critical. Company
Yes.
culture is really important, and a lot of times the culture will help you whenever you are under pressure. And some of the company policies can also, and benefits can also be there as a resource. You may have great employee resource benefits. I'm blessed to work at a company where they do have other outlets for you to enjoy the company and to relieve some of your stress, whether it's being a part of an employee resource group, or having the ability to have that flexible work schedule where you can work from home and come into the office also other days. And also you can be recognized. Sometimes we have our nose to the grind and we're working and we wonder if anyone sees it, right? But as leaders, and goes out to all those who manage people, take the time to acknowledge your employees when they're doing great work, when you see them working hard. It goes a long way, because sometimes they can feel that there is no glory in all this work that they're doing. But if you just take the time, just give them a pat on the back and just say, hey, great job, or send them an email, or take them to lunch, or do something that really would show that you appreciate their work, that will, in and of itself, can bring a lot of relief to them. And what's also great is that you have mentors and mentorship programs in your culture, right? Your office culture is full of people who've been there before, who've been stressed before, and know how to help you navigate this current environment that you're in. So I agree with Pat wholeheartedly that the corporate culture is really critical to your success.
Rod and Pat, you guys have done a nice job about talking about this topic, how it impacts company culture and institutional knowledge and all that. I want to kind of bring it more down to the claim level. And what I want to talk about is the adjuster and the attorney collaboration and how that can be impacted by stress or burnout, or how it could result in stress or burnout. There's a lot of adjusters on this webinar. I'm sure there's a lot of attorneys on this webinar. My suggestions here is help each other. You guys are both co-pilots when you work on a case together. Help each other. When an attorney and adjuster don't get along, or they're not responding to each other, or they're maybe not being totally honest with their opinions, it doesn't set up a very promising outcome for the case that you're working on together. So be responsive to each other. If you're an attorney and adjuster is asking for an update on the claim, they might have something writing on that. They might have to update their report. They might have a manager asking them for an update. They might have an internal roundtable that they need updated information about. So just take the time to respond, pick up the phone and call them back, or respond to their email and provide them with the information they're looking for. And you know what, even if there is no update because nothing has happened in the case in 3 months, at least let them know that, just let them know that, so that they're not just waiting to see what the current status of a case is. That of course goes both ways. If you're an adjuster and your counsel is asking for some information about the policy, here, please send me a copy of the policy. Is there excess coverage? I need to disclose this by this date. Respond to them. Give them the information they need that they can be successful. Because again, that you're creating stress for someone that should be your partner by not doing that. That's some other things about this topic about attorney adjuster collaboration and how it revolves around stress is, be realistic with each other. Don't withhold information or opinions from each other. Be realistic from day one about how you view the case, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what the value range of the case is, just so there's no surprises down the road that can, really impact someone's stress level on the other side when they're all of a sudden, think a claim that you have been talking about as being worth $50,000 is now being said to be worth $500,000. That's a very stressful moment for whether you're an adjuster or an attorney that has to report up to someone. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to just mention that aspect of it. The company culture is absolutely integral and all that, but this also applies to how we work with our partners, whether they're attorneys or other vendors as well.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I think we would all agree that, adjusters and attorneys need a workplace where addressing stress isn't a once a year wellness event, right? It's an ongoing initiative. So that would definitely help the situation. Our next segment here, I just wanted to kind of go into maybe some rapid fire, real world tips from the panel here. That we haven't really covered, maybe some quick practical things you've seen make a difference for reducing stress or burnout that we haven't mentioned as we're getting towards the end of the presentation. But, and by all means, anyone watching, please type in. We'd love to hear some of your tips as well. But Rod, maybe we'll start with you. Is there, something that comes to mind that we haven't mentioned that you want to throw in?
Sure. One of my tips. I mean, let's face it. I've been an adjuster for a gazillion years, and I know sometimes you can get bogged down. You go back to that heavy caseload. You haven't gotten everything done, etc. So as a leader, as a manager, I would occasionally have pull my adjuster in and have a judgment-free file review, with the goal being to make sure that whatever went wrong or didn't go exactly right in any particular file, we can address it and we can move on so that that person, that adjuster, can be free of the anxiety, because maybe they're concerned about bringing it up to manager's attention because they may get criticized. I will let them know up front, this is not that kind of meeting. It is just a free, judgment-free meeting. Let's go through every single file and just make sure that everything is going the way it should go in that file. And I think it's a good practice to do periodically, so that you don't get surprised from that $50,000, $500 file to 500,000, right? You can address it early on and be proactive about it. So I love doing judgment-free file reviews with my team.
Yeah, one quick hitter for me is remote peer check-ins. It's something that we mentioned already, but I just want to expand on it. Is, we live in a world, we work in a world that's virtual. We may be in the office, but even then, usually we're hybrid, or perhaps we're in a fully remote work environment. But check in with your peers, get to know your peers. If you're an adjuster, get to know the other adjusters that you work with. Set up a group chat with your team. Get to know your manager. If you're a manager, get to know the people that are reporting to you, not just on a professional level, but on a personal level. It goes a long way when we're disconnected physically. It goes a long way to try to figure out, what we're all about when we're not adjusting claims. Who are we? What gets us going? What motivates us? What our hobbies are. Even just stay connected, reach out to each other. Even if you have someone on your team that's maybe a strong independent worker, someone that you can leave alone for a month and they're going to be chugging away out, turning over their claim files, even then still try to check in once a week or some other reasonable interval, just to stay connected and make sure that everything is going smoothly and nothing's coming up that maybe they don't want to, maybe they think that it would be inconveniencing you to mention, to bring up randomly. So just stay connected.
Yes, Matt, that's great stuff. Getting away from and getting support from your colleagues. I'd like to suggest that it's okay to schedule in the middle of your workday an hour away from your computer, whether you go to the gym, you take a swim, you go for a walk, you put the earbuds in, you turn your phone to silent, and you walk away from that computer. that 1 hour or whatever amount of time you dedicate is not going to impede your progress on anything. And if you spend an extra hour, you're not going to complete everything. So I suggest schedule time away, have a break from what you're doing, get the mind in a different place. You'll come back refreshed.
And I'll add one of my favorites, and Matt and Rod already talked about this with procrastination, but Eat That Frog, that book, right? Tackle the hardest or most dreaded task first thing in the day, and the rest of the workload feels lighter. So that would be definitely my tip. But a lot of great examples from the panel, and feel free to send some through on the chat box too, so we can take a look at it. But we'll get to our closing slide here. And with this final slide, we hope to offer encouragement to everyone, whether you're behind a desk or you're in a courtroom, or, burnout doesn't care about your title. All of us are kind of in this together. We have that special bond. A reader of one of my books once told me that we all share this certain claims trauma. We face the same challenges in this industry, and very few outsiders can kind of understand that. So that shared experience, like on this call today, I think is where we all find that resilience. But before we wrap up, I'd like maybe each of our panelists to leave you with maybe a sentence or encouragement or some type of advice that our audience can kind of take away with them and maybe use in their next work day.
Well, our audience probably thinks I sound like a broken record, but I'll just go back to something I said at the onset of the webinar: is just be proactive to the extent you can be. It's not just going to help get and set and keep your claim on the right track, but it's also going to help yourself as the adjuster or the attorney. You'll feel peace of mind knowing you aren't letting any fires build that you'll have to spend time putting out tomorrow or next week. Yeah, it almost goes along with eating the frog, as you just said, Chris, and just stay proactive and be ahead of your work so that you don't have to deal with problems that are growing.
And from my standpoint, if you're an adjuster, remember the most important thing you do is you're bringing a light into a dark space that a policyholder is living in. And if you're in the legal profession, well, yeah, it's an adverse environment, but at the end of the day, things have to get resolved. And there are parties to that resolution. So the work we do is important, and sometimes we lose track of that. So remember, you're doing great stuff. It's a great industry.
What I will say is that, you want to avoid isolation. I think that there's a difference between solitude and isolation. And I love what Pat said in terms of getting away, turning off getting away from your desk for about an hour, taking that lunch break. There's something to that, because when you are isolated, you're just left to your own devices. You don't have the company of your friends, your colleague, and if you're working remotely, you may be all by yourself trying to handle complicated matters, trying to deal with files that maybe aren't really causing you stress and anxiety. I think at the end of the day, isolation is a trap, right? Instead, you want to reach out to your key relationships. Solitude is when you need to get away. That's that break that we were talking about with Pat. Isolation is what happens when you do not intentionally stay connected with your key relationships, be it your boss, your mentor, your mentee, your family members. I think it is so important to not do that, because isolation is just not healthy for you. It can cause mental problems, psychological problems, and physical problems, and you want to avoid that. And that's a good way to avoid burnout, relying on the relationships that you have. And we have such a great industry. I mean, like Matt said, we met at a conference, and Chris and I, we worked together on different files. The same thing with Pat. We have such a great industry and great people that you can connect with, but you do need to tap into those relationships to make sure that you avoid isolation. That's what I would say.
And I would say my response would be don't underestimate the power of perspective. Sometimes the most important shift that you can make is kind of how you see that challenge in front of you. Just like we mentioned, the adjuster that is celebrating getting no files, and the other perspective is the adjuster's worried when he doesn't get any files because the company's not doing well. So another example is, your boss keeps giving you all these files and, you're stressed out, but you think of it the other way. He really trusts me, he's giving me all the most challenging files. There's a lot of trust right there. So there's just different ways you can kind of think about that. And I think a shift in mindset is kind of exactly what our conversation has been about today, finding ways that we can kind of approach things differently and sustain ourselves for the long haul when we're fighting stress and burnout. Again, though, if anybody has any final questions, please put them in the chat. We'd love to hear any observations, any tips. But with that, thank
Chris,
you for,
before you
sorry.
before you shut off, Chris,
Sure.
before you shut us down, you sort of hit a memory bank in my head.
Okay.
When you just said that, right, about your boss giving you a lot of work. I remember one time there was a cat, and I was asked to handle all the claims associated with that cat. And initially I was like, wow, I'm going to be the only one. I have to travel to another state and I would be the only one handling it. But let me tell you, when I went there and I took care of those files, it was a real boost for my career, because it said to me, my boss said to me, wow, I can depend on you to take care of this assignment because we value you. So it's not always punishment, and it's not always something that's intended to stress you out, but just the way you can receive it as a compliment from your leadership, that you're the one they entrust with this heavy responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. And that made me think of another thing too, where an adjuster, once someone left, obviously there was 100 files to divide up, and one person walked into their manager's office and said, I want to take them all. And we all thought, wow, this person's
Wow.
nuts, right?
Right.
He did his best. He worked those files. 6 months later, he was promoted to a manager, and guess where all those files went? They went to all of us anyway. So we should have probably stepped up. So it's just, the mindset, we see things very differently. So,
Absolutely.
um, but yeah, if anybody has anything final that they want to add, otherwise, thank you to everyone for joining us for this conversation. I think if you take anything away from today, I hope it's that you're not alone. Your work matters. There are real ways you can protect your energy and passion for this profession. So, thanks again to everybody. Thanks to the panel, and hope to see you again.
Okay, we've unfortunately ran out of time today. Don't forget that you can always review past CLM webinars, including this one, by logging into your CLM account and clicking on the Events tab. You can register and listen to those at the CLM.org. Please note that CECLE credits are being reported on your behalf, and it will take 2 to 3 weeks to process. Also, located to the right side of your screen, you'll find a link to upcoming events happening at the CLM. I'd like to thank Chris, Patrick, Rod, and Matt for their hard work in putting together today's presentation. Thank you so much for attending. We'll see you next time.